Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
Hey,
So you guys grew up together in the same town. Can you talk about that? Like you've known each other for a long time, right?
Yeah, it's
yep,
been a
yep.
while.
Uh, Jim and I both graduated class of 79. John's class of 81, so he's a little younger. But we were both parts of a Lexington rock scene. You know, anybody who plays in high school like knows who else is playing. So eventually we found each other. Um, in so there's actually like cassette tapes of us playing together in 1979.
Wow. Now you
Um,
guys all went to Lexington High School.
Yeah, we all went to Lexington High School.
Were you when you were growing up? I mean, when did you become friends? Like how old were you? You said you and Jim were friends first, Crispin, and then
Well, John and I met first, but we weren't friends until high school. And Jim didn't actually move to Lexington until 78, I think. He was just there for our senior year.
Mhm.
Whereas John and I both grew up, you know, I mean, I basically lived in Lexington my whole life. But we didn't know each other as kids. We went to different schools, elementary schools anyway.
When
And
did you
we're
guys
two
start
years
playing?
apart, 2 years apart in age too.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah,
nothing now, but when you're 12 and 14,
Yeah.
it means the world.
yeah.
Were you guys playing at a young age?
Oh, like separately? Uh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't start playing until 76. So, yeah, by 79, I'd been playing for 3 years, which is enough to have some chops, you know. When did you start,
Started
John?
playing bass in when I was 14, so that would have been 77.
Yeah.
But I had played guitar for years before that. Classical guitar.
Wow.
I wanted to play guitar when I was a little kid, and my parents kind of tricked me. And instead of giving me an acoustic guitar, and it's a steel string folk guitar, I got a classical guitar which has nylon strings,
Yeah.
and you play with your fingers.
Yeah.
So I did that for years. I was actually like really good training to be a bass player. Um, and
What
then I
about
switched.
what about listening to music? Did you guys hear a lot of stuff that you liked when you were young? Like the 70s was a great period for music.
So great. Yeah. For me, it was all radio. Um, as a little kid, I mean, I think my parents gave me a radio as a birthday present when I was like 6 or 7. So, all the top hits from like 1970 on, I was like totally, focused on. And then once we had a little spending money, we started buying records, right, Crispin?
Yeah, yeah. Save up your allowance.
Yeah. Was
Did
there a
did you
good
get
re
did you get records at Music Alley?
Oh yeah.
That was gonna be my next question was gonna be where? Was that a record store in
That
Lexington?
was in Lexington, yeah. But there was
Yeah.
also like we take the 77 bus into Harvard Square and go to the Coop. That was a big place to buy records.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mass Ave goes right into Lexington, right?
Yeah, we had to do a little change in Arlington Heights. Um, but yeah, that was the thing. Go to Harvard Square.
Now, before Jim got there, because you said he didn't get there till the end, did you guys play in other bands or play with each other at all before Jim got
Oh
there?
yeah. Yeah, we sure did. I had a band, mostly covers, but we wrote some songs in those days. I think at the end our set was probably about a third original songs before Jim arrived on the scene.
So there was not another band before the Bags?
Yeah, we were both in several bands, because there was a really active cover band scene in high school in Lexington and probably every suburb in the 70s. And as Crispin said, eventually we found each other because he was a really good guitar player, and I was a pretty good bass player, so it just made sense.
Really?
And So yeah, we had a couple different bands apart and then together, and then eventually decided that. In fact, we played with Jim a little bit, didn't we, Crispin?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I was saying. There's
yeah,
tapes of us playing together. And so we were kind of starting a band in 79, and then Jim dumped us and joined an
right.
already existing and gigging cover band.
Yeah,
Like they had gigs all lined up and everything. So it was like, skip a couple steps and just
right.
jump right onto stage. And so John and I then wound up starting a band called The Bind. Um, and but I was also at that point like off in college, and so it was like a band that existed during winter and summer breaks. Um, and I'm just doing some backstory here. There was a point in 1983 when I was in my senior year at UMass Amherst and home for either winter break or Easter or something like that. I forget. But I was walking downtown Lexington and I ran into Jim and hadn't seen him since 1979. And so we were like, hey, what's going on? And it turned out that we'd gotten into the same music over those years, like, oh, that band Fear, and and so Jim said like, hey, Iggy Pop's playing at the Paradise tonight. You want to go? And I was like, yeah. Um, so we went with his brother Dan to go see Iggy at the Paradise. This is early
Wow.
83. And so that was like this amazing time. And we were like
Yeah.
right up front. And John's heard me tell this story a million times, but there was a point when like they did Louie Louie and Iggy like took his mic and went like stuck it right in my face and I and I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like singing Louie Louie with Iggy Pop. Um, but so that was a great time. So then I finished my education at UMass, and when I graduated, I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. But what I really wanted to do was rock. So I called Jim and I was like, yeah, I'm in Boston, and do you know any bands that are looking for a guitar player? And so he at the time was playing with Peter Dayton,
Oh, wow.
and so he said, oh, actually, Peter's looking for a guitar player. So he got me an audition um, to that band, and I got in. So there was this from like early '84, like for the next over a year, like Jim and I played with Peter Dayton and in the Peter Dayton band.
Love at First Sight. Did you play that one? Love at
Yeah,
First
it
Sight.
was. We so the set would have like Love at First Sight, Perfect Wave, Stuck on the
Yeah.
Same Refrain, Skin Tight, songs from that EP, and then also a lot of LePest stuff, which was
Yeah.
like Better Off Dead and um, Spy Master and Kill Me Now, and which was great.
Yeah.
Um, but eventually, we were kind of like itching to do some of our own stuff. And around that time was when John was getting out of school. So I was like, we should hook up with John and play together,
That
which we
was like
did.
around 84,
So that was 85.
85. So did
Yeah.
you have songs already that you had written that you brought? Like, what was the first few rehearsals like when you guys got together?
Ooh.
That I
Um,
I remember like the first time we played together, we played and like recorded, a cassette recording of Pioneer and also Bigwig. And then there were a couple of other songs that have fallen by the wayside, but it was productive like right off the bat.
So I guess because of Peter Dayton, you must have had a few connections in town. So maybe you were able to get some gigs early on.
It helped us a little, but not a lot.
not so much.
Yeah.
No.
No, we were playing, Chet's Last Call on a Wednesday night, like every other band. One of
Yeah.
those gigs where the first band would go on at 8:15 and the last band would go on at 1:15 and there would be, five or six bands. Um,
Do you remember your first gig there?
I don't specifically remember our first gig because we played several times there. Crispin, do you remember the first? I remember when we played right around the time that Hurricane Gloria was coming through. Um, but I don't think that was our first show at Chet's.
Yeah, that was probably our second or third fall of fall of that year, 85.
Our first
What?
gig was actually a radio broadcast.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. WJUL up in Lowell.
Lowell.
yeah.
Yeah. Our first gig at the Rat was we recorded a demo with John Pfister, who played with Asa Brebner, and so he got us a slot on a bill that had Asa and also Mojo Nixon.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
cool. Yeah. You ended up
yeah,
on the same label as him eventually, right? Because he's an Enigma. He was on Enigma
Yeah.
also.
yeah.
So those first gigs that you played, once you started playing the Rat, did things start happening right away for you guys at that time, or was it a slow build?
My recollection is that it was really slow. Like we were, it was like, well, we can give you guys a Monday night, and then you do that. It's like, oh, you can give you a Tuesday, and we weren't playing Fridays or Saturdays until 1986. Like it took a while to kind of work our way up. And we played that show at the Rat, but then we just couldn't get a gig at the Rat. And eventually they let us play like in the balcony, like up, way upstairs, which obviously kind of sucked. So it was not fast. I
Well,
mean, you know,
sometimes when you're at that stage, you latch on with other bands. Were there other bands that you guys were starting to play with that, hey, we have a show, come play with us? Did that start happening around that time?
John, what's your recollection?
Yeah, for sure. There were a group of bands that we would see all the time and play with. Um, and it's funny because it did seem like it took forever, but really it was just a year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like when
Yeah.
you're that age, like you're like, come on.
Yeah. Um, so now it seems like it was really fast.
Was there like a defining moment for you guys when you had a gig and all of a sudden it was like, oh man, we've arrived and people and the whole nine yards, or did it take a
I feel
lot
like
longer?
um, uh, it seemed like when we started playing at Green Street Station, that's when we started getting some real traction with like fans, and we would fill that place up. It's not a big room, but we became regulars there, and that's how we met Joyce Linehan. She was booking Green Street, and we pretty quickly went from probably like Thursdays to Fridays to Saturdays and headlining there, just within the space of a couple of months. Um, because we could we could bring 100 people into a bar. Yeah, that's all it took.
Yeah. Yeah. Were there a lot of people from your hometown that were coming out, or was it the Boston people?
I think it was the Boston people mostly.
Yeah, there were a few Lexington people, but just a few.
What about shows? Because I know I read in the Globe that you guys played with Nirvana. Was that later on, or was that around the early time?
Yeah, that was 1990.
Oh, that was later. Okay.
I mean that, I don't think Nirvana was even together in 85,
That's
86.
true. They weren't. You're right. Um, okay, so I guess 86, 87, you must have been close to starting to record because Rockstar came out in 87. What would happen during that period? And Steve Barry was very involved in the scene at that time. So did you meet Steve and let's record? How'd that come together?
There was like a year where we kind of developed our set list, writing some songs that wound up on our first record and other songs that didn't and would fall away. I mean, it's a pretty typical process, I guess. But by mid 86, after we'd been together for about a year, like we had a pretty solid set and we really wanted to make a record. And we had a demo tape that we called the green tape, that we were shopping around to people, and nothing was really happening, and Steve Barry was the one that was like, record you guys, and if we can't find a deal, I'll put your record out. So we were like, yes,
Where
you
was
know.
that you recorded with him? Did he have his own studio at
That
that
was
time?
at Pyramid. I forget if it was called Pyramid Sounds or Pyramid Studio, but in sort of near South Station in Boston. Um, and that was, I think we did basics for that in late '86, and then there was overdubs and mixing in early '87, and then there was a pretty long time where we had those recordings and we were shopping them around to different labels. Um, Eventually landing at Restless.
Yeah, I remember. I'm pretty sure I got that demo that you're talking about, or one. I couldn't find. I was looking for it, but I can't. I know it's around somewhere. It was
In
three
some box
songs, I
somewhere.
think. I think it was three songs, and Lee Harrington, I think, was the person that told me about you guys because I was in California, and
Yeah.
uh, and the neighborhoods all of a sudden took a real liking to you guys. So you must have did something to impress those guys because they were like the bags.
Yeah, they were big supporters early on, and we played with them a bunch of times. And yes, Lee did take a liking to the band, and he was out there spreading the word. He was w wonderful to us.
Yeah.
And Dave too, and Mike. The first time we played with the neighborhoods, I think the reason why they were looking after us is maybe because they ran over my bass. Was that in Worcester, Crispin, or Providence?
Yeah. There was some sympathy there.
Where was
Uh,
that show?
that was it. We played a show with the neighborhoods at Rick's in Worcester.
So, and
And
that was the first time we played with them.
that was the first time we played with them.
So we
And
didn't, I mean,
just
we
so
were,
Jim
we
and I
were
had
all,
played with them before in the Dayton band, and so we had met them. So like when we saw them, we
right.
were like, "Hey!" But that was the first time with the bags. And yeah, we were loading in, and Mike backed their van like over John's bass, like it
Ouch.
just like crunch, and they felt
Good
horrible about that.
time.
Yeah, like Lee was like, "You can use my bass like during your set."
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, this is before the show?
Yeah.
yeah, we were loading in.
Oh
Um,
man.
yeah.
So Rick's in Worcester, I kind of remember that place, I think.
Yeah, not Ralph's, Rick's.
Rick's, yeah, Rick's.
I
Um,
should say, Steve, that we were like huge fans of the neighborhoods,
Yeah,
just as rock fans. Crispin and I had both seen them a bunch of times um, before
massively huge fans.
before we ever played. We were like front row center, you know, um, for a few years before this ever happened. I mean, I can't speak for the other guys, but I was definitely in awe of that
Yeah.
band. Those
Oh, I
guys.
was too. Yeah. I mentioned that I went to UMass Amherst. They came out there all the time. Would play at the Blue Wall, Rusty Nail.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'd go see all those shows.
So you guys recorded the rock star. I mean, you made the whole record and then you shopped it, right?
Yeah, we I don't think we had a name for the album, but we had that collection of songs, and yeah, we shopped it around.
Because I know John, I'm pretty sure we spoke on the phone a few times when I was in California, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
was really interested. I was interested in the band, but I was leaving Enigma at the time, so it was a
yeah.
rough situation. I couldn't sign a band when I was leaving because
Right.
that had happened other times, and it's not never good when you sign a band and you have to leave the label. They're like, "What the fuck," you know?
Yeah.
But I know I was really interested in the band. Who was it over at Restless Enigma? Was it Scott Vanderbilt that you were
It
talking to?
it was Julie Farnham,
Julie
uh,
Chrysler.
Julie Chrysler.
Yeah, Julie Chrysler.
Was she the first to go over there?
Yeah, I actually helped Julie come there because I we had the FU straw dogs, and she wanted to move to California, and she came out. So
Right.
she was the one you basically worked the deal out with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it must have been. Um,
And then when she left the label, then it was everything went south.
So that
yeah.
happened with her too. Yeah, well, we're famous for that. Sorry.
It's a fluid business. There's a lot of turnover. So,
Yeah,
It
you
happened.
never like
Yeah,
to be.
I remember speaking. I worked in the stock room at Crate and Barrel in Harvard Square at that time, and I remember you like calling and you know them coming over the like PA system like down the stock room like phone call for Jon Hardy, Steve Ricardo for Jon Hardy. Like
I was really into the band, man. I
yeah,
really was.
yeah. But it was too, like we already had drafts of a contract going and it just felt like it was too late to put on the brakes.
Oh, so I called you when I was at Roadrunner
You were
already.
just starting out.
Okay.
That sounds
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were starting out and you were like, I love the band, like come be on my label. And I was like, we're already like almost finished inking this deal. If it had been like literally like a few weeks, if the timing had been a few weeks different, um, things might have worked out.
You did the right thing going. Let me just say that. It was you definitely were on the right label. What happened when you got there?
We just were there for a year, and that was it. They there was a big shakeup, and we got you know they just weren't interested in putting out a second record.
Yeah,
Because
I
it
mean, it's
was
just
like
like
a
the support that we had at the label was then all of a sudden not there, and
Yeah,
they did right by us for a while. Like I remember, we did a tour, and I remember being like we're in Lexington, Kentucky, and you go to the record store, and there's the poster in the window saying that we're appearing at this club, and our records were in the bins and everything. We're like, all right, um, but then we were in LA, and Julie had left at that point, and we had a meeting with the then head of the label, and there was a clear lack of enthusiasm for the band.
yeah, we lost our champion, and that
Yeah.
was our Boston connection. Julie was our Boston connection too.
yeah.
So without that, with the label being in LA, it just there was no real loyalty. Um,
I
so
remember when I was at Roadrunner Emergo too, we got the neighborhoods record and God bless the bags.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice that right away, or did someone tell you about it, or
We noticed it pretty quick, like
yeah,
right in the right in the gatefold.
like my boss at Roadrunner was in Amsterdam and he's like, "Is this that LA band bags?" I'm like, "No, no, that's not the LA band." Did you guys ever have any conflicts about that, by the way, the name?
well, no, we haven't had any conflicts. Conflicts. We've probably felt a little guilty about it. I think we Crispin and I definitely had the soundtrack to the Decline soundtrack,
Hmm.
and on that album,
It's not the bags.
yeah, it's Alice Bag Band. So I didn't even in high school I didn't know about the bags. They came and went pretty quick. And then Alice kept it going as the Alice Bag Band. And so those songs and that was, you know, the big exposure was that Decline film and the soundtrack. Um so we didn't
And
really
that was
think
in
it was
pre-Google days, like you couldn't
Yeah.
look up
yeah.
that kind of thing. So, we were limited in what we knew. Like we
No,
had
no,
no idea.
correct
We
me if
didn't
I'm
know that there was another band like pretty famous band called The Bags until we'd already started up in Boston and there were some hipsters who would pull us aside and say, "Hey you guys, like I like the band, but like there's already a band with that name."
Al Quint probably was one of those hipsters, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, it felt like it was too late even though it was probably only a year. It just felt like it was too late and also that The Bags had come and gone already. So we're like, "Eh,
Yeah, there's tons of
Also, like we
bands.
got signed to an LA label and they didn't say anything.
Yeah. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but things really got more happening for you after that when you went to Stanton Park and because you ended up winning the Rumble like a year after that. So did the buzz get bigger after the Restless record?
I think it's like we had a momentum locally and both before and after Rockstar came out, and that momentum continued locally. It's just that like nationally, it kind of flatlined, and probably went down. But locally, yeah, we kept playing shows and they got bigger and bigger, and we kept putting stuff out on Stanton Park.
Did you tour a lot in that during that period?
Regionally, but the only national touring that we did was for Rockstar.
What about the Rumble? Was that a good experience for you? It was still BCN at that time, right?
Yeah, it was great.
I think I was at one. In fact, I know I was at one of the shows during that period. Like maybe the first, not the finals, but I was at the first or the semifinals. One of those.
Yeah.
You guys were great, man. Every time I saw you guys, it was fantastic, and I knew it was a great band. Um, Talk about that period because that's probably when Nirvana gig happened. Were there other gigs like that too that you guys were getting on because of your Boston connections?
There were some pretty big gigs. I mean, when we got signed to Restless, we didn't have management, but by that time, '89, we did with Tom Johnston.
Oh, Tommy, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, so we had a reputation, and then we had him to help us out. So yeah, there were some shows like we played with Jane's Addiction, and uh, remember playing up at the uh, casino up there in the what is it, like Hampton Beach?
Hampton Beach.
Yeah, with the Hoodoo Gurus.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's a big gig at the Channel with the Butthole Surfers.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, the Rumble was great. Like the Rumble was pretty big then. Like the semifinals and preliminaries were at the Paradise, which is
Hmm.
big venue, and then the finals were at Avalon, which is now House of Blues on Lansdowne Street, and it was packed and it was great. And so we got all this press and all this attention and all this cash, but we also got all this free studio time at like a bunch of studios. Uh, and that studio time helped us record what became our second album.
Self-titled record.
Yeah.
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 Um, which came out after the Swamp Oaf album.
It's really a third record, right?
Yeah, it was like a third, yeah, it
Yeah.
was second Bags record. Uh,
Oh, I can't just skip over that. I have to ask you about that because I love that song, Sad Minnow, that was on that. I got a call. Thank you, by the way, for the vinyl, John. Appreciate
Of
it. I
course.
remembered that song because I remember that. I'm like, what is going on? Who is this band? Why did they do that? Talk about what made you do that. The name change, I
I
mean.
mean, like we were in a time, the Rockstar came out in '87, like you said, and then we toured in '88, and then our relationship with Restless ended. So we were kind of like a rudderless boat for a while, like just trying to like, oh, we gotta get hooked up with another label. And we were just trying really hard to like do the next big thing. And fortunately for us, we developed this relationship with Aram at Stanton Park, and he was like super supportive. So he didn't have like a huge distribution network or marketing network. Yeah, I mean, he was kind of like a one man shop, but he was really supportive of us creatively. And so I think there was a point like after in '88, just like trying and trying and trying to like get another deal going where we were kind of like we should just do something to do it. And that turned into Swamp Oaf.
Interesting record for sure, no doubt. Um, so then after that, you did make a couple more records and then you took a break, I guess, for a while. Did the band just break up around 92 or 93 or something like that and just call it quits? Or what happened during that period?
Yeah, I think those we played at sort of like last shows. We had a couple of shows at Bunratty's in was that 92, Crispin?
It was
Early
late
92.
'91.
And then I was in Canada for a while and Jim and Crispin were still in Boston, still playing. And then um when did we was it like 2004 maybe we started playing again. Um
Yeah, there were a couple reunions in the 90s, but we started playing for real in late 2003, early 2004. Like let's write more songs and record more and put out new stuff and play shows.
And you got
That
a
was,
song on Guitar Hero during that period
yeah.
too, right? How'd that happen?
The creative director at Harmonix that put out uh, Guitar Hero and later Rock Band, this guy Ryan Lesser, was a big supporter of the band. He was like, "You guys have to be on Guitar Hero," and we were like, "Okay."
It does make sense. It's a guitar heavy band, that's for sure. Um, when you did your reunion shows or you got back together at that time, was it for a long period of time or was it a short period? I know you put out Sharpen Your Sticks. Was that the record during
Yep.
that period?
Yep. And Mount Rockmore. We put out two during that stretch. We put out two new albums, and I think we re-released a couple of the old records too.
During that time, yeah. Yeah, so that was probably like 3 years or something like that that we were re rehearsing on a regular schedule and playing shows and writing songs for those two albums. It's probably
Were,
when it was like 2004 to 2007 or 2008, something like that.
were there other bands for you guys during at that, before and after that period?
Well, right after the Bags broke up, Jim and I briefly played in a band called United States, with Rich Gilbert
Oh,
and Chris Blue, who is a Lexington friend who goes way back. Um, yeah, the Bags and the Zulus shared a rehearsal space, and both bands broke up around the same time, so it was this very convenient, easy thing to happen. And that lasted for about a year, and then I just kind of bowed out of the scene for a while. Jim, obviously, he played
oh
with
yeah.
Liars for a while and Upper Crust, uh, you know,
He never stopped.
never
He's
stopped.
in a lot of bands, actually.
Yeah.
You guys have seen a lot of changes in the industry over the years. What does it feel like from when you were doing it then to coming back and playing these couple of shows you just did now? It's like a whole new ball game, isn't it?
It's a whole new ball game for sure. Like there was, I mean, even when we were together it's funny that period of time in 2004 when we were together. That's like the halfway point between the original run and now. Like that still feels kind of recent, but it's not. It's like 20 years ago. And so back then, the kind of social media life that we all live now didn't really exist. Like there was like MySpace was kind of going on, but
Yeah.
it was mostly just like websites and email. Like you couldn't do this in 2004. Um, so yeah, things have changed a lot. Like there was no Spotify, there was no streaming. Uh, People were starting to have uh, iPods, but uh, the whole kind of digital side of things like hadn't really kicked off. People were still listening to CDs.
Really.
Uh,
I
you know,
really miss the old days, man,
yeah.
but I'm involved in all the social media that you have to be involved in. Um, Did you guys plan on doing reunions or because I saw you at the Justine Koval tribute show and I heard you guys were playing. I was very excited. You guys were fantastic that night. Was that planned that you would eventually do that, or did you do that for Justine and then decide to do another reunion, or did you plan this to have a reunion in January?
What do you think, John?
Well, uh, Crispin and I had been writing together um, a couple of years prior to that memorial show, and at first we weren't sure if what we were doing was going to be a Bags album or whether we were just, we just like to write songs together. So um, at that point, I don't know, Crispin, we probably had a dozen pretty good songs going. And Jim was on board. He was interested in recording the material and putting out a record and maybe playing some shows. Um, but it definitely having the opportunity to play at Justine's Memorial was it was obviously a super sad
Yeah.
occasion. But it was great for me anyhow to be able to get back in the rehearsal space with my buddies and then get up on stage and play for people. Felt really good. The band's always had terrific chemistry, musical and just social chemistry, and I it definitely helped playing that show. I think it would have been hard for us to say, okay, that's it, we're done.
Yeah, you didn't seem like a band that would that hadn't played together for a while. I was like, wow, these guys like haven't missed a beat. It was really spot on. So you didn't have the January show already booked at that time.
Well, that I mean that was that memorial was in 2023, and the January show was in 2025. So
Was it that long ago? Oh my
that would have
God, I
been
thought that was
far
so.
off. Yeah.
It was October of 2023.
Oh, what? I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was that long. Wow.
Time goes by
I
fast.
It
guess,
does.
I guess,
Yeah.
man, I guess. I have to mention this because I saw the Croaks for the first time at the trip, and Anna ended up coming on my show, and I love that band. You
Yeah,
know
they're
what
so
blew me
good.
away is when I was talking to her, and I said, you know, sometimes you guys remind me of Fairport Convention. She knew who Fairport Convention was, and I was
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. They know their stuff
They definitely do,
for
man.
sure.
Your daughter, of course, is a guitar
Yeah.
player in the band and violin too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Very talented,
And
man.
a note for those who care about this kind of thing. That's my old violin that she's playing.
Come on,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. She pimped it up with like a pickup so it can go through pedals and everything. Sounds great.
Did you see her developing as a musician as she was growing up? Was it something that seemed like that she was going to do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, she and I had a similar experience in that we both played. She grew up playing a viola, and I played violin. We both suffered like these kind of horrible, like, middle school orchestra kind of scenes where you're just like sawing away. But for both Haley and myself, like that experience like informed what came later. And for me, like with the violin, like there's definitely like this dexterity that you develop that I could easily apply to the guitar. No real musical knowledge there, but they're just the kind of physicality of it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
but she played well like early on, like in high school she was shredding um on the
So you kind
guitar.
of knew that she was going in that direction.
Yeah.
Um, I had to ask about that. You know what I didn't ask you, and I meant to. I go out of order sometimes. The songwriting process that you guys have, because you both sing various songs. Do you write together? Do you write separately? I mean, how does that all work?
Both ways. Um, but I think that our best songs are usually a bit of a collaboration.
Yeah.
So, maybe one of us will be responsible for, I don't know, 75%, but the other 25% is really important. And
Right.
it's also should mention that Jim contributes a lot too. Drummers tend to not get writing credit. I don't know why that is. It probably goes back to a time when you had, like a lyricist and someone at the piano, with a chord progression and making up a melody, and those were your two songwriters. But drum parts are musical parts.
Do,
So
do
you
you
show a
guys have
song
a
to a drummer and
publishing?
they,
Do you two
what's
have a
that?
publishing company together and you split
Three of
Well,
50-50?
it's,
us.
it's always been the three of us. It's always been
Yeah.
three
Okay.
ways.
Oh, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
we
So
split
Jim does
everything.
get a cut.
He
Yeah.
does. He gets an equal cut.
That's great. See, not every band does that, but a lot of bands do. You know, I like the bands that do. It makes everyone feel more of a part of it. Because they always say, oh, well, he's just working on the arrangements. He's not really writing the song. And I've heard that argument before, but it's kind of like if you're together and working on a song, isn't that the song, basically?
Yeah. And it depends on the band too. I mean, anybody who comes to see the Bags or listens to our songs is going to know right away, like these guys have an awesome drummer.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, if the drums are just there to like as a metronome, yeah, maybe that person doesn't get writing credit. But Jim brings a lot of creativity to the songs and the different parts and the arrangement.
I, I,
Sometimes he,
I didn't get to the show in January, but I mean, there's so many videos online that I I must have watched almost every song online. It seemed like there was a lot of good energy going on in that room that night.
Oh, it was
oh
great.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was amazing.
So what does
Well,
this mean for the future for you guys?
we've got to do it again. Um, but I think what we learned when we had our sort of uh, second coming in the early 2000s was if you play a show every 3 months, you're going to see your draw start to diminish because older people like us don't want to go out all the time
Or at all.
I
or
get that.
or at all.
I get it. You know,
So
people when I feel bad sometimes and I can't make when I can't make a show, but I'm like, dude, you know, in the 80s and the 90s, I was out every friggin' night, you know? I mean,
yeah,
I
you put your
can't
time in.
it's like it's hard to do it now, you know?
It is. Yeah.
And
So I think we're
I
going to
like
try
the
to
early
play.
shows. Go ahead, sorry.
I think we're going to try to play again. I think, Crispin, we're on like a one show per year kind of projection. Does that seem
Probably,
right?
yeah. I mean, in the short term, I think we've been working on an album. You know, we're recording an album, and so that we need to finish that.
Where are you doing that?
Oh, we're doing it with Dave at Woolly Mammoth, Dave Minnick.
Minahan. That's
Yeah,
good.
it's great.
Wow, so you have a bunch of new songs.
Yeah.
No timeline on that?
You
Um,
mean
I
for
think we've done all the basic tracks. We're still doing some overdubs, and we'll probably be mixing throughout the spring and summer, and hopefully start to release some singles in the fall.
Do you think you'll do the Bandcamp thing and like put a single out every couple of weeks and then put the record out afterwards? Is that seems to be the trend these days?
Yeah, we'll probably do something like that. I'm not sure that we'll put all we have a lot of songs. It's going to be a big
They're all
record.
singles.
Yeah, so and we like albums. Like growing up with albums, that whole presentation means a lot to me. Um, I even like having side one and side two. I think that's important. Even through the CD times, um, it's nice to be able to break down. Say you have a record that has got like 15 to 20 songs. If you can break it into two movements, side one and side two, it gives you an opportunity to say something. So I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do with this record, but I don't think if we have, say, 15 to 20 songs that they will all be singles. I think we'll probably release a stream of singles and eventually put the full record out on CD.
No vinyl?
Maybe vinyl. Uh, we'll see. I think we have too much material to fit on a single LP.
Double album.
We could do that.
Gold, yeah.
Um, yeah, we'll see.
And we'll put
Just
God Bless the Neighborhoods like
um, just one thing. If you go back to any moment in the band's history, which one would you relive and why? I mean, you guys have been doing this for 40 years. I mean,
I mean
Relive
that's a
an
hard question.
album or a year. What
Like, is there anything from the past that you wish you could do again and relive during that
Oh,
period?
there's a lot of stuff I wish we could have a do-over on, but I don't know if I would want to relive any of it.
I
But it would be
probably should have said highlights too, if there were any real big highlights during that period.
I mean, a lot of it was just like really great, really exciting, but then there are parts of that that are frustrating and uh, you know, feels like everything's taken too long. So, yeah, a do-over of certain things would be great if you could arrange that for us. Really appreciate that.
Let's go back to 1987. Well, anyways, I'm really happy that you guys came and did this because I've always liked the band, and I didn't get to see you a lot during the 90s because I wasn't living here, but been a fan of the music all along. So thanks a lot. And I'm glad that you did your reunion and it was really good.
Thank you, Steve.
All right,
Come see us
guys.
next time.
Thanks.